How you doing, fans? We thank you for coming out to another episode of In the Sand podcast. I'm excited for you to be here once again. I'm excited to be here with another great coach and excited for another great interview. Coach Coleman is an amazing young man. Had an opportunity. This is our first time actually having a true conversation, but we've talked over the years. If it comes from scouting report, sharing film, getting information about teams that we are playing. And every single time he was very transparent. We're giving me a solid scout report on the offensive side, defensive side, their pressing, substitutions. So it was a great help to me to be able to reach out to someone that we never met, never talked, and still be able to have that communication. And then also too, Coach Coleman has been a major supporter of In the Sand podcast. So it's amazing just to be able to be on this line with him, on this interview with him. And so I'm just very, very appreciative of his time. Coach Coleman is a solid coach. He has experience on the college level as well as the high school level. And that's the biggest part I'm excited about, because a lot of times we take for granted when we see a coach on the sideline because we really don't know his or her experiences. And a lot of times they have a lot of experience that can help younger coaches out, can help our more seasoned coaches out. So it's going to be a great interview. I'm going to learn a lot about what he's doing right now at Senatobia as their head boys basketball coach. And so, Coach, welcome to the show.
First of all, it's an honor to be on the show. I really love what you're doing with the podcast, spotlighting coaches throughout the state and what you're doing. So I just feel honored to be able to be on the podcast and share a little bit about, my story and through coaching.
Yes, sir, man. I thank you for your time. I know all time is precious, especially during the off season. During season, basketball coaches are pretty busy year round, and I don't know if people really realize that. I think they think when the season's over, it stops. But Coach probably can speak to this as well. You planning for the summer. You're thinking about possibly fundraisers to help you go different places. You're thinking about team camps. You are mentally preparing to get ready for the following season. You're working on schedule. You're doing tryouts. There's so many different things that go into it. And coaching is really it's a year-long career. It's a year-long job. It's probably a better choice of words, where you really just never get a true break from it. Of course, during the season, obviously, it's a little bit more active, but the off season is just as important than the main. I mean, just as important as the official season. And I hate to use the word off season. I know it's becoming more of a not so popular word in our field, but I would just say the season that's pretty much that has where we pretty much get prepared for the upcoming season. So, Coach, before we get started the interview, what are some things are you currently doing now that falls into their boat?
So, like you said, with no time off, I'll never forget the week that our season ended. I mean, my mind's immediately churning into, we started off our off season, thinking of off season plans. The first thing we did, we kind of what I call exit interviews with players that, they're returning. I sat down first of all, we did a team meeting and kind of wrapped up the season and, talked about some things. And then we did individual meetings where, I took probably 2 or 3 players a day and just spent time one-on-one, just picking their brains, allowing them to talk about things from the season and what are some of their goals, as well as some of my goals for them for the off season. And then we wrapped that up with I did something a little different this year. I did like class meetings, like I met with the seniors that are coming up, the juniors and sophomores, by class or whatever. And just we kind of same thing as in our individual meeting, just talked about goals for the upcoming off season. And like I said, right now we're doing a lot of skill development every day, just working on fundamentals. And I've just from watching basketball and coaches, you can never get bored with fundamentals. That's something we stress every day in our program, as well as we're in the weight room a couple of days a week as well, working on strength training. That's pretty much how our off season look. Then Fridays we usually play pickup. I have some guys that, played here for me and just alumnus of the school from the last few years. They'll come in on Fridays and, play pickup, which is good. I tell them, I said, everything we're doing during the week, on Fridays, you get to put it into action. You can do drills all day, but it can't you got to get those game like reps too, and get those runs up and down the floor for sure.
Coach, I think that's good. I was just kind of writing some of those things down. Team meetings are definitely, or exit meetings, I should say, are a popular thing, and it's probably always been happening in our field. I know when I was in high school, our coach never sat down with us and talked to us about, things, upcoming things he would like to see from us. So I really like the exit meetings because it does a couple things. It allows kids to be able to reflect. I'm not sure if a lot of young people, because I don't remember as a player reflecting too much in detail. Of course, after the game, you think I could have made this shot, could have made this pass,
Right.
but it really allows kids to evaluate themselves because a lot of kids don't really see. And I don't say a lot of kids. I would say some of our players don't realize that evaluating, um, identifying some things to improve their game is so important, because as coaches, that's what we do all year long. We're constantly evaluating, we're constantly self-examining about where we can get better. So I really love the exit meetings. And the second reason that I like them is because I tell our kids that this is kind of what happens on the job. Sometimes you have to be able to come in and you talk to your supervisor, you talk to your boss, and
Right.
what that does, it prepares them for those life skills. And that's what I love about basketball. That's what I love, like, with coaches like yourself, is that you are preparing kids, as they always say, for the real world. And if I was talking to my kids today, everything that we do, if it's from discipline, if it's from making you focus in the classroom, if it's whatever we're doing, we're trying to prepare you for things that you're going to see. So, Coach, I really like the exit meetings. I think that's important. So especially, this is more for our younger coaches. If that's something that you're not implementing after the season, please implement that. Like Coach Coleman says, it gives you an opportunity to be able to maybe correct some things and give you direction going into the summer, as well as to the next season. So, Coach, that's some good wisdom, man, that you just shared with us on that.
And another thing that goes along, we did it in the middle of the season this year. A couple of things just wasn't going well, and back when me and you played, and older guys, our generation, we could have a team meeting and could sit down and say, all right, guys, tell us what y'all think the problem is. And we would all hash it out. We could talk, but this generation's more so, they're big textures and those type of things. So what I did this year is I was looking around in my office and I found some note cards. I said, I'll tell you what. So we had a team meeting. I said, I want you to write on the note card. Don't even put your name on the card, and just write down 5 things of which you think the problem is, like why we're not winning these close games and a couple of the issues we had. And they did that, and then I just mixed them up and I read them out loud. And after reading them out loud, then it opened up dialogue. Then they kind of spoke up and started speaking, and we were just able to have a productive meeting after that. But I just had to start out by kind of getting on their level, doing something they're more comfortable with, because sometimes with this generation they're just not comfortable with just speaking up like that. Back when like for instance when we played and would have team meetings and stuff.
Yeah, that's, to me, that is so interesting with kids. Like, they can do all the TikTok, they can Snap, they can do IG, they can do Twitter, have all these like major conversations. But then when it takes, get a group of them in a circle, it's like, man, it's like they got tape on their mouth. They are afraid to communicate. And I'm not really sure where that came from, because I see it a lot of times in the classroom. Like, kids, they shy away from speaking in front of people. They say, Coach, I'm afraid that everybody's looking at me, or I'm afraid of how I sound and how I talk. And I know we were like that too, but Coach, I know, like I know, it wasn't an excuse. Your teacher said, you're gonna do this, son, or you're gonna do this, young,
Right.
or you're gonna get a negative grade. But if you did that now in this generation, you'll be in the principal's office now. So I mean, but those things helped us out. Like, we didn't have an option, but in this generation, we give kids options. Well, maybe you could come after school or before school, but kids really feel uncomfortable with communicating in front of their peers. And so that's another good thing that you're doing to help kids just prepare for the, I guess they say, the real world. So, Coach, I'm excited to hear about your journey. Coach, you have an amazing journey. When I was kind of studying and doing some research on you, I learned a lot about who you are and just your amazing career. But but as we get into that, talk to us about how did you get here? Talk to us about how the game of basketball has brought us here to this day.
So, I'll just go back when I was a kid. But basketball runs in my family. My dad played basketball. On his side, my aunts played basketball. My granddad played basketball. So, it runs in the family. Started out as a kid, played upward church league ball. It was my first just basketball experience. And then I played middle school basketball for, again, just from coaches, being blessed to play and being around good coaches. Coach Randy Blaylock, who had a big influence on my life. He actually coached Andy Kennedy in high school when Andy Kennedy was a senior at Louisville. So that was pretty cool. And like I said, that's where my middle school career started. In high school, I had three coaches in 4 years of high school ball, but every one of them great coaches. Played for Coach Todd Hutchinson in ninth grade. He's a veteran coach and a veteran coach throughout the state and had some success. And of course, obviously, played for Coach Raheem Lockhart, 10th and 11th grade year. And we were in a big basketball district. We was in a district with Murrah. That was back when Dendricus Nelson, LaQuentin Ross, those type of guys were there. Madison Central, Northwest Rankin, and senior year. I played for Coach Jaworski Rankin, who obviously he took some teams to state and was a head coach for a while. So that was my high school career. Played at Grenada, and then I always wanted to be a head coach. I said to myself when I was a kid, I'm either going to play in the NBA or I want to be a basketball coach. And now we see what happened. Fell pretty quite short of the NBA goals or whatever. But I was still on par because it was kind of a binary choice between the two. And my senior year, you obviously, I would have loved to have played college ball, but as a player sometimes you kind of see the writing on the wall. So it was time to start thinking about what was next. So I started my Coach Rankin was actually an assistant coach at Tupelo under Coach Grant Pate, who had just gotten the ICC job right after my senior year of high school that spring. And I knew I wanted to coach, and we just got to talking, and just from people in my coaching circle and people I knew said, if you want to be a coach, a great idea would be to go be a manager at the college level, because you be around the game and around some good coaches. And actually, I had two opportunities to do that. I went to Holmes Community College and visited with Coach Flanagan, who's obviously done a great job with the program there. Another good coach. And then I went and visited with Coach Pate because Coach Rankin had that connection, and decided to go to ICC. So I was a manager there for 2 years, and got to learn a lot under Coach Pate. And it was guys on that staff like Coach Adam Kirk, who obviously did a good job at Ripley and Corinth and has taken some teams to state. And in my first year there, Jason Smith, who had a great basketball career at Ole Miss, was on staff there. So just getting to be around those guys on a daily basis and just soak it up like a sponge was a great thing. And they allowed me to be hands-on. There were times where they would open the gym and a couple of the players would come in the gym and I'd work them out. They let me do that. So that kind of helped me grow as a coach, just being around those guys, getting my foot in the door with that, because all those guys are super great guys, especially, Coach Pate and he's had college experience. He was an assistant coach at Ole Miss. And so after that, my 2 years at ICC, I was transferring to Ole Miss in the fall. And, I had a couple options. I'd talked to Ole Miss about being a, manager for the basketball program there, which, Andy Kennedy was there, who's obviously a great coach as well. But, part of me, I think it was Coach Kirk had told me, he's like, Coach Drew Tyler, the boys basketball coach at Oxford, he's good about, letting college students, help coach. And then part of me was like, I was really wanting to coach or whatever. So I'll never forget, I went and visited him, Coach Tyler, on campus, one day, and he allowed me to help out. So for 2 years there, I was able to help out with the program there at Oxford High School. And Coach Tyler is one of the best coaches in the state. Just consistently wins on a yearly basis. Great X's and O's guy, just all around great guy, and really influenced my coaching career. In the 2 years I was there, Jarkel Joyner played there. DK Metcalf was just loaded with talent, and back-to-back years there, making it to the state tournament. And being on his staff, just being able to sit back and watch the two things. And another thing I'll give Coach Tyler credit for, he let me coach. He let me coach the kids and be very hands-on with the program. As far as even with scouting, there were times that I would go scouting for them, do scouting reports, and watch film. And probably, sorry to some of my college professors, there's probably some days in my college classes I'm in the back of the room, on the laptop watching film for our next game and just breaking it down or whatever. But really enjoyed that. And then so after college, actually I got my first head coaching interview when I was a senior in college. And I'll never forget. It was the Tisch County job. It came open, and the principal there was actually in Tupelo, which is about a 45-minute drive from Oxford. I think they had a softball game that day. I was like, "Well, I'll meet you." So I actually had my first interview for a head coaching job at Starbucks. No, it wasn't Starbucks. Barnes and Noble in Tupelo at the mall. So I had that, and then after that, Coach Metcalf, me and him had developed a relationship, which he'd coaching at my alma mater, Grenada, and he brought me on staff there, and so I spent a year there at Grenada, and he left right before the season. It was a family move for him, and Coach Joey Cooley was a great guy. He's got a lot of head coaching experience, so I enjoyed getting to work for him for a year, learn some stuff from him as well. And after my goal has always been to be a head coach, and so after that is where the Winona opportunity came open, kind of full circle. Coach Todd Hutchinson, of course, who coached me in ninth grade, he was the head coach there, and he's like, "Look, I'm about to retire." He said, "If you want to, I can put in a word for you here." I said, "That would be great." So that's where I got the Winona job, and obviously 4 years there, and then now to Senatobia. So that's kind of my road to throughout coaching to where I am now.
Coach, it's a lot that I learned in that, and the world is super, super small. And I didn't realize this, and I guess I should have put two and two together. My first year at Murrah High School had to be no, it was 2009, 2010.
That was my sophomore.
All right, cool. So I think that was Dondrika's senior year, maybe
Senior year. I think it was.
That
was his junior. It was his. I think it was his junior year. I think.
So that's small. That's a small world, because we had some major battles with Grenada. Coach Lockhart, and I know my first year there was Coach Frith at Murrah. I know he just passed away, God rest his soul. And then it was Coach Marlon Dorsey, and Marlon Dorsey and Coach Lockhart, they were good buddies. And so it was a rival, man. It was a rival to see that action and see them compete against that. So that's a small world, Coach. Again, we met each other a while ago, didn't even realize it. I like what you said about the head coach thing. I always wanted to be a head coach. Again, my dream was the NBA too, Coach. So you're definitely not alone in that, man. I wanted to go to the league. And I often wonder, do our kids realize that as well? Like, you can look at the writing on the wall and say, hey, I probably need to transition to a new direction. Because again, and it took me a minute though. Again, in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, I still got a chance at this. But when I saw my other peers or my other friends, getting off, I'm not saying necessarily getting offers. We had a couple guys getting offers like Jeremy Wise and Jeremy Caldwell, those guys. But when I saw other kids, making where they're going to school, looking at dorms, looking at their roommates, and I'm sitting here looking like, man, I don't have anywhere to go. So I said, I got kind of nervous, and I said, man, I think I'm gonna be a failure in life, because I haven't applied anywhere. But again, I did pretty good for myself and just going to school, things of that nature. So I thank God for that. But no lie, coach, at that moment, I can remember I was sitting in class. We had played Lanier the night before. We had lost. I was kind of looking at the paper, and then I realized, I got in the game, played a little bit, was blessed to be able to play against Monte Ellis. And I tell my kids all the time, yeah, I played against Monte, but I was just out there. He was just different. That's my only story to fame. But I can remember that day in class, and everybody was talking about the game because it was on the front page. Because at that year, it was '05. I want to say Lanier might have been number 1 in the state. We might have been number 3 at the time or somewhere in between there. And so it was just good to be able to see that. But I realized when I didn't see my name in the paper and then make the stat, I said, man, it hit me right then. Like, man, you need to find something to do with your life. And so that's when coaching came into my life. So again, I think we all had that story. So it's amazing to be able to share that with you. Now, Coach, I want to talk about some of the coaches that you work for. Coach Pate. Coach Pate is a great guy. I had an opportunity to officially meet him last summer at the coaches clinic. And the one thing that I brought up to him, and I know it's probably wasn't the best thing to bring up to him, but that's when I was first introduced to him, is when he was at Tupelo. And coach, he had an amazing 2-2-1 that he ran. And obviously, he should have won, he should have won that state championship, but they ran into Jim Hill, man, and that was an amazing game. And Coach, I often watched that game earlier in my career. And the reason I watched it is because, I was at Murrah at the time. I was an interim coach, and we had lost to Jim Hill. And I felt like we lost them in the district tournament. And I knew that I had to advance far if I wanted to have an opportunity to still coach at Murrah. And we took Jim Hill down to the wire and we got beat. And so fast forward to that game, I watched that game, and that was an amazing game. And I often watched that game as motivation because I felt like the team that I had, and of course, all the things that went on, I felt like we should have been there. But again, Tupelo had such a great, great game. And I felt bad for Coach Pate, man, because he had them guys playing amazing. It was an amazing game to see. But it was just good to be able to see, him put a game plan together. And that was just a great 6A basketball game from top to bottom. Game went to overtime. It was just Jim Hill's year that year. And I thought it was a special year because Coach Harris had passed away a couple of years. Who used to be Coach Fred Harris, who used to be at Jim Hill, had passed away. I want to say maybe 3 years prior to that. And so you could just kind of feel, because their head coach, of course, was Coach Speech at the time, and he was a Coach Harris guy. And all those kids that were playing on that team, I think they were in maybe the 9th grade when Coach Harris passed away, and they had a great 9th grade season. So I saw those guys grow together. And I think that was just their time. So Coach Pate is a good guy. I mean, doing good things at ICC. Had some couple challenges earlier, just overall, but it's good to see him, on the sideline coaching and still doing what he does best. Coach, talk to us a little bit more about Coach Pate, man.
Coach Page is fine of a Christian man, an example as you'll find, like just how he runs his program and just the type of person he is. And one thing that I got from him is just outside of X's and O's. Obviously, you just mentioned the 2-2-1. We'll get into that. I know later in the interview about defense philosophy, but 2-2-1 I run. I got from him, but just how he cares about the players and everybody. Like I was just a manager, and he cared about me just as much as the players. Like he would always come in the dorms, and when he do dorm checks, he would check players and managers, but he would sit there and just have a conversation. And like when he would come, I know on campus, like when we'd have breakfast in the mornings, I mean, he'd come sit at the table in the cafeteria and have breakfast with us and just talk or whatever, like he was one of us. And I know throughout the year, he would have, cookouts at his house for the team. And, also like weekends that, we would stay on campus, anytime he would offer, take us to church if we wanted to ride with him or anything like that. But that's one of the things, just his Christian influence and man of faith that he is, just a great, great overall human being. We still stay in contact, and I take my team there once a year to their summer league over there. But Coach Pay's a good X's and O's guy too. He runs a lot of good offenses. I still have in a folder that I keep up stuff of some of our offensive actions we ran when we were there, and a lot of drills. He has a lot of good practice drills that he does in practice. I gain a lot from being there under Coach Payton. He's really helped me out throughout his career, throughout my career as well.
Yeah, he seemed to be a very genuine guy when I met him. Of course, again, example that I gave to him probably wasn't the best example, but that's the only thing that I had. But you could just tell from a distance that he was a very solid coach. He is a very solid coach. Now going to Coach Tyler at Oxford again. I have another small connection there. I know when I was at Germantown High School, we came to, I might have been Oxford. And we played, I want to say we might have played Oxford that day, but it was a great opportunity to be able to see that again, to be able to kind of be on the floor and see Metcalf play in basketball. And people may not realize it. It was an amazing sight to be able to see a kid like that big, that strong, that fast in high school. And you talking about can like jam, like he almost, the way he dunked the ball, and this might date me a little bit, but he almost, it reminded me of Sean Kemp almost. Like he had the same athleticism, still very strong, very intimidating, and it was a very, very sight to be able to see. And again, Coach Tyler again is the same way. Again, I've never met him personally. I've always seen him at a distance, maybe at the MAC clinic or maybe at the All-Star games. But you can just tell from the programs at Oxford, when you think about North basketball or when you're going into the playoffs, you always have to keep Oxford in that mix because of just the program that he runs. And again, I think sometimes he may not get the credit as he probably deserves across the state in general. I know people up north show him a lot of love, but Coach, talk to us a little bit just about that experience with being at Oxford, and of course, and talk a little bit about the new facility as well. Of course, I was an opportunity to be there, but talk to us a little bit about Coach Tyler and just the Oxford community.
So actually, my first year of helping Coach Tyler at Oxford when I transferred to Ole Miss was their first year in the new high school there, new gym, all that stuff. So I mean, really, I walked in the day when my first, I was just looking around, just like, wow, this is really nice. But Coach Tyler, a lot like Coach Pate, just great guy, real great, really great guy, and very knowledgeable about the game of basketball. And as far as X's and O's with offense, one of the best I've ever seen. It just the actions he runs, the offense he runs, and just how really good out of timeouts or drawing stuff up, and just some of the stuff he runs. I was like, wow. And at the time, I'm like, I would have never thought to run something that way. And I honestly get a lot of the offensive actions, quick hitters, a lot of stuff I run, I got from Coach Tyler. Um, like I said, great coach. Like he's won a whole lot of games there, and he's one of those that Coach Tyler is the type he gets the most out of little, like years. I know the last few years they hadn't had the Jarkel Joiners or DK Metcalf, but one thing about his teams, they're going to compete and be in any game, and he just strategically, he's good with strategy, just keeping his teams in games and just getting the most out of whatever he has. Like you'll look some years that you'll think Oxford's going to be down and they won't be anything. You look up and they've won between 15 and 20 games, and they're a playoff team. So just being able to see firsthand how he runs, it was good. That was my first time helping with a high school program. Transitioning from Coach Pate. So you see how college programs run, but just being under Coach Tyler really helped me see how to run a high school program and getting a front row seat to that as well. And one thing a lot of people don't know about Coach Tyler can still play basketball too. Still a really good player. Hit that, like he's a regular. A couple of times I played with him, and everybody around Oxford or anybody connected with Ole Miss, they know about him. He at Turner Center at Ole Miss, a place where a lot of people play pickup at, and he's a regular there, and he still plays a lot, and still pretty good.
Man, that's pretty cool to see to see a coach still be able to get at it, because as coaches we know our players are always trying to challenge us. And I often tell them, don't look at who I am now. That's of course I aged a little bit, but what kids don't realize, and they should realize, they watch the NBA, as you get older, you get wiser in basketball and in life. So now instead of having to be out there trying to cross over, trying to play full court, Nah, I ain't got to do that. I'm gonna play in small space, take advantage of you, this grown man strength, knowing how to just take advantage of spaces and score like that. And kids be so amazed. But I'm like, it's
I
just
know.
basketball, man. Like, I don't have to be John Morant. Man, I could darn near be John Stockton and still get buckets. So
Exactly.
so it's funny to see kids just break us down. And a lot of times when I first start playing with them, like first two games, I get them at half court. As the game go along, obviously I kind of just tire out. But the first two games when I win, they like super shocked. But I'm like, hey man, this is what we do, man. And then obviously we coach you all, so we know everything you can and can't do. So I'm gonna just make you play to your weaknesses. But kids, it's fun though to be able to play against the kids. Coach, now you had great experience, coach. You Let me talk about this first. I'm glad I saw that. Thank God I saw that. Coach, I really wish, well, I don't know, I hate to say wish because God plans your life out. But looking back at it, it would have been great for me to be able to, I went to Jackson State University, just went to school. I did some other things on campus, but now that I'm a basketball coach, excuse me, and I have aspirations to be a college coach, I almost would have liked to been a student manager, and of course they do student managers now. Some schools do student manager coaches, because what
Right.
I've been learning over time and through the connections, a lot of those guys who start off in that role end up getting a college basketball job a little bit faster than the average coach because they have built those college connections with the assistant coaches. Obviously, a lot of those assistant coaches become head coaches. You build it with the head coach, which is major. And so, looking back at it, that would have been something I would have loved to do because getting into college is a challenge because just like anything in life is who you know and your experience. So what I tell all young guys who have aspirations, and any college kids are listening. I know some of my high school kids, they listen. If you get an opportunity, you can't, play basketball. If you're not fortunate enough to get a scholarship or walk on onto the team, there are some other options that you can do that'll put you in that area, especially if you're looking to coach. Obviously, you can volunteer, but if you in college, I've seen even guys play on the women's team. I know one guy played on the women's team. He worked extremely hard, and he ended up walking on at Mississippi State. Then he did, grad student. And before you know it, he was an assistant coach. Or take the role of being a student manager or being a student manager coach. Now it's going to be humbling a little bit, obviously, because you got to do the things that managers do. But I think that's a good pipeline to get you to coaching, especially when a coach on the college level. So that's one thing that if I could maybe do things different, coach, I would have probably loved to maybe go to school at another, big Division I and create those relationships. So I think that was very, very major for you to be a part of. And I'm glad you said that and shared that because that's major. That is very, very major. Now, coach, now again, you had that experience. You volunteered a couple spots. Of course, the Winona job is coming available for you. Coach, talk to us about that process. Talk to us a little bit about the interview process. Again, we've been talking about this for a number of episodes, but I don't think you can talk about it enough because every situation is different. So kind of give us, you don't have to give us the whole thing, but just give us a small insight into what that process was about. And then talk to us when you got that phone call to say, Coach Coleman, you're going to be our head coach for the Winona Boys. Coach, talk us about that great experience.
So it was the last week of it was actually the last week of school. I got a phone call from the principal at Winona, and he calls like, "Hey, when can you come interview?" And I was like, "As soon as possible." So I remember taking off work. I think it was scheduled maybe. I remember interviewing on Wednesday, I believe. And I got a phone call on Monday. He's like, "Well, can you come Wednesday morning?" I said, "Absolutely." So I went and I interviewed for the job. Interviewed with the AD and the principal there. And my interview there was probably over an hour long. And I was under contract with Grenade. I'd already signed my contract because I was still young in my coaching career, and I was like, my goal after college, I said I'm gonna interview for head coaching jobs until I would get one. And if not, I was happy at Grenada. It was home to me, being in my alma mater. I was happy, and so I interviewed there. Interview was about an hour long, and then towards the end, he asked going back to the contract thing, he's like, how much trouble would it be for you getting out of your contract? And I was like, well, I've already talked to my principal and, told him, we were on the same page about everything. It shouldn't be at all. And, he just said, okay. Well, I waited. It was probably about a week. And on a Friday, I got a phone call from Mr. Rollison, the athletic director there. And he said, hey, we'd like to offer you the head boys basketball job here at Winona Secondary School. And before, I could ask, how long do you need me to give you? I said, I'll take it, So I immediately jumped on. It was not I need to think over the weekend or anything like that. I just knew that, that's what I wanted to do.
Coach, that's amazing, man. Because I'm laughing because most jobs that I've been offered for, I always tell them, man, let me get the weekend.
Right.
Because sometimes I really do need to think about it, but sometimes, as the kids say, man, you don't want to seem so thirsty. Sometimes, so I let them
Right.
But I like that, Coach, because I've learned this too. Of course, before I got married in the dating world, sometimes you wait too long, you'll miss an opportunity.
That's right.
And sometimes in the work world, if you wait too long, people change their mind on you. So don't wait too long, coaches. Again, I know a lot
That's right. Even in the Bible it says time waits for no man. So hey.
Amen. So I know a lot of you all coaches have been offered jobs, and a lot of you all are trying to wait. So again, be careful with that. I know, of course, my brother Justin Sanders at Germantown, he was kind of in that same boat. He got offered a job at one spot, and then he got another job, and I was thinking the same way. I was like, "Ooh, coach, you got to be careful because I know you got one thing, but." He was looking to really excel, and he was really to want to expedite the process of getting to where he wanted to get in. So he kind of bid on himself, and it worked out that that Germantown job came through. But coach, he waited, like you said, he waited to the last minute to make that decision. And of course, he did it the right way. He communicated with the school, and so and the reason I said that, I thought that's important. The hiring process gets a little bit tricky because for those teachers and coaches know, school districts like to lock you in early. They like to lock you in early. And that's good for teachers because most of the time teachers know if they're coming back or if they're staying. I mean, excuse me, if they're staying or they want to go somewhere else. A lot of times when the contracts come out for coaches, sometimes the season is still going on. And when I mean the season, like basketball season in the state is still going on. So a lot of jobs haven't been posted. There's still a lot of things that have to work out. And a lot of times it puts us in a tough bind sometimes. And so I'm saying all that to say, if always be open and upfront with your building principal, your head principal, your athletic director, because it's so much easier to have the conversation prior than having it afterwards, because it doesn't really matter because they're still going to make their phone call. So it's better when they receive their phone call that they can already be prepared for, because every spot I interviewed for and the jobs that I did get over my tenure of coaching, my principal was like, I already know why you called me. So it's good to have that conversation. And coach said it best. A lot of schools will work with you. Now, there have been some instances where some principals are upset, some kind of bitter, not always the most accepting of it. But most of the time, you do it the right way, come about it the right way, they will let you out of their, make adjustments with your contract. And then you said something else, which I think is key. And that's why I'm glad I asked this question. Sometimes that interview can be long. So you have to be prepared for the long haul, because sometimes some interviews obviously can be short, but a lot of times when you come to any basketball interview that I've been a part of, maybe except for one, it's been an interview. Like you got, like, it's for, like, you get there early. Obviously you want to get there early. So that may be 15, 20 minutes. Then depends on where you got to drive from. And then the interview lasts. So you got to be prepared almost for a 2-hour window.
I call them marathon interviews.
Yes, sir. It really is, coach. And the interview process is it's so different. I can remember one time I applied for a particular school, and all your nerves are already up, and then you never know what to expect, because when you get there, everybody know you're hiring for a coach. So when they see a guy come in or a young lady come in dressed up or got dressed up very nice, everybody's looking at you like, okay, we know he's applying for the job. And so everybody want to question you, see who you are. And I know at one particular school, and I can say at Pearl High School, I interviewed for Pearl High School a couple of years ago. And I went to the office and they said, okay, cool, sit here, wait on us, coach. And then they said, well, coach, let's walk you over to the gym. And so if anybody who know about Pearl High School, the cafeteria is right there. So all the kids are in there. So it's probably about maybe 700, 800 kids. And I'm walking across here and I know everybody's staring at me. I'm like, man, did I really have to do this? So we get to the gym and they said, well, no, coach, we're going to interview back in the office. So we got to go all the way back across the cafeteria. So it's just the interview process is so it's so different, and it's a lot of different stories. I can even remember too, a lot of times when you interview, coach, they give you a tour of the school. And so they show you the facilities, they show you the locker room, the classrooms. And that's always interesting because the kids, they literally treat you like you're the president of America. Everybody looking like, oh, who is that? Who is that? And the teachers are looking like, who is this guy? So who is this young lady? So it's the interview process is fun, man. I enjoy it. I try to find a positive in everything. Coach, I kept up with you a little bit when you were at Winona. Now, coach, I guess before, is it still, didn't the school get a name change, or was there
Yeah. So after my first year there, the school name the same, but the district name changed. The Winona Montgomery Consolidated School District. After my first year there, we consolidated with Montgomery County, and so the kids from that school, they came over, and the school consolidated after my first year there, and they changed the district name.
Cool, man. Coach, talk us about the time at Winona, man. I kept up with you. And coach, of course, and I don't want to steal too much of it, but again, I saw the work that you did from a distance. And coach, to be honest, man, that's kind of like the perfect picture of how the coaching game works, or how hard work is displayed, because it probably didn't go as planned, your first year, maybe second year. But coach, you saw the excellence of the program. And of course, we get into this a little bit later. Even the year after you left, coach, obviously, I can't think of coach name right now, but the coach that, yeah,
Coach Rugged.
Yeah, Coach Rugley, he was we were classmates. He went to Murrah for a year or two, and he was actually under me. Good guy as well. When Coach Rugley coached that year, obviously he did his thing, but a lot of those guys still took some of the things that you had, and they advanced pretty far. So to look at when you first got there, even all the way until you left, it was an amazing coach. So talk us a little bit about being at Winona.
So my first year there, the year before, obviously, they'd struggled. They had a younger team, won one game. So I knew when I came into it that, it was going to be a rebuild, a total rebuilding of the program. And, I'll be the first, my first year there as a head coach, I went winless. We didn't win a game my first year there. And not winning a game, your first year head coach, and, it was tough. We went 0-23. It makes you second guess a lot. I had people, you have people that, not necessarily criticizing you or anything, but just people that look out for us like, look, maybe you're not ready to be a head coach yet, or, maybe you should be an assistant a few more years, or, get some more experience and this and that. It was tough, but it was a verse that was sent to me, that year. And it was Galatians 6:9. And if you see it, it's on my Twitter page, and it's in a hashtag every time. And it says, let us not grow weary in well doing, for in due season we'll reap if we faint not, which, basically message in that is, don't give up, continue to do the right thing, that it's going to eventually pay off. So I adopted, that motto. And the first year, it was tough. Had a lot of young kids, because when I first got there, some of the upperclassmen wouldn't buy in. So at Christmas time, I sent them packing, because we're not winning with you. So I might as well let some of these younger guys get reps and just do a complete, full reset, and, start from scratch. And so, after Christmas, even though we didn't win a game, the competitiveness was there. I know LaFleur County had a really good team that year. They made it to state in the Final Four, and we started that game out. I think we were up like 11-0 to start that game with a young team. So I just saw from that to the end of the year just how they competed. Second year there, obviously the consolidation happened that spring, and Montgomery County is always known for basketball. They had Coach Frank Miller obviously he's a veteran coach, good friend of mine, did a great job with that program. A lot of talent there. So some of the kids from there came over. And with that, we were 2A. Well, I think middle of July, MHSA, they have rules on when schools merge, consolidate, and they voted, and we got bumped up to 3A. So we go from 2A in a district where I thought, a lot of the teams in that district were like losing players, and I had everything coming back. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I think we can compete in the district a little better next year. Well, we get put in 3A South with Choctaw Central, Southeast Lauderdale, Morton, and Forest, and Kemper County. All those schools are very basketball rich schools. Like anytime you walk in the gym, there's trophies, there's banners, and great coaches all across from there. So we got bumped into 3A South that year, which was a very, very challenging division. But as year two began, it was kind of like year one, to be honest, in a way, just because you had to, with the consolidation, just getting everybody to mesh together. You had new players, which a lot of them knew each other because, they played ball together outside of school. But just, it's still different when you're trying to mesh them all together actually on the team. So that was a challenge, but, it ended up paying off in the long term. But second year there, we got off to a decent start that year. We were 3-3, playing pretty good basketball. And then, we kind of got into the tough part of our schedule and, lost some close games, but still a young team in a lot of sense. And that year we went 6-23, I think, and our district it was a gauntlet. I mean, it was tough. But in a lot of those games, we still competed in a lot of those games. I'll never forget our first game we went to Choctaw Central. It was our first district game on the road, and we were up in the second quarter, and obviously their talent and depth just took over, and they won that game. So, that year it was still growing pains in the program, and obviously district tournament. We didn't make it out of that. We played Forest that year, and it was a competitive game, and obviously we came up short. Then year three, we got moved into another district because it was a 1 year thing. We got moved in a district with Humphreys County, obviously, solid basketball program. Coach Horton, had some great teams there. Amanda Elsie, Louisville Central, and actually before they changed the name, Coahoma Aggie. Coahoma Aggie had some really good teams in 2A and 3A. So we moved into that district, and year three there, things kind of started to click how I wanted it to. We finished that year 13-16, but probably out of the 16 losses, probably 10 of them single digits, and a lot of games that we just couldn't finish close games. Sometimes that's your biggest challenge is when, you get your group of guys that are bought in, but now you got that, but you're not necessarily the last year till you haven't won a lot and been in a lot of those situations, closing games becomes a challenge. So that was a big challenge that year. We lost that, we probably would have made the playoffs. It, still stings to me to this day was we had Humphreys County at home that year, and we're up 18 in the fourth quarter, and things are going well, and then they made a run. We ended up going to overtime, and we lost that game. So that was I guess the first time that year of actually when we had a lead and we just didn't finish. So that year, like I said, kids played hard, and things were starting to piece together as far as just from personnel and running my system that we were trying to do, and we ended up. I think we played Amanda Elsie that year too on the road. Last night of the regular season, another opportunity. If we win that, in a district with 5 teams, the top 3 teams get a bye in the district tournament, and you pretty much locked up a playoff spot. Another game, I know we were up 9 going into the fourth quarter on the road. And it was one of them games early in the game, they jumped out. It was their senior night. They jumped out on us big, and we fought back, got the lead, and fourth quarter just came apart. We ended up losing by 3. And so that stuck us in the 4 and 5 game. And one thing in the district tournament format, you don't want to be in a play-in game, 4 or 5 game against the host school. So we were actually 4th, and Humphreys was 5th, and the district tournament that year happened to be at Humphreys County. So, we lost a close. I think they beat us by 9 that year. And so And obviously going into my last season at Winona, the COVID year, and we got off to a quick start that year. I think we started before we lost again. I think we were maybe 11 or 12-0, and just everything clicked from a chemistry standpoint. I think the game, I really thought that, when I saw that, our first 6, 7 games were obviously games, I knew we would win. When we played Yazoo County, and obviously, Coach Dale, he's been around, does a great job with his programs, and he'd just taken Yazoo County to the state tournament the year before. And, going back to Coach Lockhart, he had some solid years at Yazoo. They're really good, a lot of those guys back, and we beat them at home that you're in a non-district game because me and Dale are good friends, and we got that game together. So we're two 3A schools. It'd be a good early season test. They were 3A South at the time. So when we won that game, I kind of started seeing that this team probably could be special, and we ended up in one of the more special wins. The head coach, we beat Grenada that year at home because Winona and Grenada is probably 20 minutes from each other. So that's kind of the thing that I started when I got the job. I wanted to start back playing Grenada because they used to be a really big rivalry in Winona and Grenada back in the 80s. And so we went through district play undefeated, and going undefeated in district, especially in the Delta, was pretty big because obviously Delta basketball is very athletic, a lot of great teams and coaches. And that year we didn't, because during COVID they gave you the option to have a district tournament or not. And, we didn't have the district tournament, but we finished 8-0 and won district that year. And a lot of the guys on that team at Winona was a very junior heavy class outside of 2 or 3 seniors I had. And the first round we drew North Panola, which obviously North Panola, get into North Mississippi basketball, always very good. And the crazy story about that was North Panola actually finished first in their district that year. And the district tournament happened to be at Senatobia the week before the playoffs. So I was able to just go up here to Senatobia and watch the district tournament. And, that was what I call Snowmageddon. That was the snow and ice year, to where, for a whole week, we basically didn't play basketball or anything. But, Byhalia and Senatobia were the 3-4 that year. And, I'm thinking, watching film, we kind of prepping for either Senatobia or Byhalia, which we'd played Senatobia early in the season that year and beat them in double overtime, which probably to this day one of the better games I've been a part of as a head coach. But ended up, it was a weird year. North Panola and Holly Springs were going to battle it out for the top in that district. They ended up falling in the consolation game because Byhalia and Senatobia ended up winning those games. So it was crazy. I'm going from thinking Byhalia, Senatobia to now, all right, North Panola and Holly Springs, 2 great programs. And North Panola, a whole week off, no practice or anything. We host the playoff game. North Panola, obviously very athletic, good team. We jumped on them 19-4. I mean, putting on a clinic on how we're supposed to. I mean, just everything's going right. And what good teams do, they finally got it together. North Panola makes a run. They go up, I think, maybe 3 or 4 in the fourth quarter. And we ended up holding on somehow to win that game. And second round, that was a year that, usually now with the format, you play a first round game on a Tuesday, you get till Saturday, plenty of time to, scout and prep. So with the snow, they pushed everything to 1 week. We played, I think they did it was like Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday that year. We played North Panola Tuesday. Well, no time to really kind of enjoy it because right after the game, I'm on the phone getting ready we got Noxubee County coming and, trying to get ready to play them. So, we ended up, they beat us by 7. And I really think in that game, just kind of with that group, that just the lack of playoff experience, I think kind of showed in that game. And we ended up losing that game. And, but in all, to go 22-4, 8-0 in district that year, district champions, from where the program started from year one that's just one of the joys in coaching, is just program building, to see all your work, blood, sweat, and tears, everything you put into it come to fruition. And, after that year, kind of, Galatians 6:9, really came to life, all the work and not giving up, we finally reaped it and had a really, really good year with, obviously the core group that came back a year after that there with Coach Rugley. And I actually went to that game. It was the only game that year I went to, and just to see a packed house for a playoff game. And in the back of your mind, like, man, like a lot of these guys from where they started to now, seeing a packed gym. And I was so happy to see them get to play in that environment that next year.
Coach, that's a great story. And Coach, a lot of that, I kind of just want to break that down. Coach, give everybody that verse again, because it is on your Twitter page. It's been there for a while. And typically what I do when I see coaches with scripture, I click on it, Coach. But Coach, that verse can help in so many aspects of life, what we just talked about, Coach. So, Coach, give them that Colossians 6:9 again, in case somebody needed.
It says, "And let us not grow weary in well doing, for in due season we will reap if we faint not." And other translations of it says, "Let us not grow weary doing good, for in due time we'll reap a harvest if we don't give up." That's kind of your everyday terms of it, but that's kind of what I live by, especially with my coaching career. Is just always doing the right thing, doing good, no matter how hard it is, because eventually it pays off.
Coach, I love that, man. Reap what you sow. Coach, let's talk about this, because this is kind of what the podcast is for. Because when we dig into this sandbox, as we say, Coach, you get the job, excited. Of course, when you get a job as a head coach, man, it's the most exciting thing. You got all these great ideas, great plans. We're gonna paint the locker room with the jerseys.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna wear this, I'm gonna be sharp. And then I go 0-24. And so, and then you said it, Coach, you hear the outside noise, you start to internally questioning yourself, and you wonder, man, is this for me? And you think in your mind, man, I've never done this before. I've never been a part of this, or I've never done this, man. I've been, I've been at the biggest programs, I've been here, and where do I go here from now? And then the second season, Coach, you go 6-23. And of course, you still, but you see the harvest. You see it because you planted that seed, but it's not showing right now. Then the next year you go 13-16, and then you end with a 22-4 record, Coach. That is proof positive that coaches need time to build programs. And I say it again, coaches need time to build programs. And what we're trying to do is teach, educate, and inform people who are outside the coaching world what that looks like. Because Michael Jordan said it, on another level. But some coaches make it look easy, or sometimes coaches, we make it look easy, but it's harder than what it looks, because Coach said it. You got to get kids to get adjusted to you. You have to be able to weed those who don't want to be there. You have to deal with all these other issues that happen that most people outside of the program don't know about. Because a lot of times, and we won't get too far in it, but a lot of times some of our kids come from single parent homes. Some of our kids are raising themselves. Some of our kids may not have food to eat. Some of our kids have to work a job. Some of our kids are bouncing around from house to house. There are so many moving parts that happen. And so that's why I inform people who say, well, why this coach is not doing this, or why he's not having this success, or why she's not having this success. I say, give them time. It takes time to get something operating the way you want it to operate. And I was the same way, Coach. I coached girls and boys when I first got to Pisgah. First year with the girls were 4-24. And I was like, man, what is going on? The boys were steady. We didn't have a winning record maybe until my fourth year. We stayed steady with it. I knew that we could eventually get to where we needed to be, but I knew it took time. In my whole 6 years, only one parent questioned what we were doing. And this was like maybe about the third or fourth game we lost to a team on the boys' side that we shouldn't have lost to. And they questioned, they say, is he the guy for the job? Because the guy that he replaced, he beat this team. Now he comes and loses, and this guy, Chris Sanders, is supposed to be a good coach. And I just told her, in the most nice, polite way. Obviously, it's gonna take time, and we'll get there. And of course, our girls got better. Our boys got better. We got some district championships. We got some things that was to be celebrated, but it takes time. And so I'm excited that you were there. And so any coach that's listening, veteran or young, it takes time. Keep making plays, keep being successful, keep doing the right things. And as coach said, and I'm glad he said it, I like when we can get some Jesus in here, you'll reap it eventually. Just take a little bit of time. Coach, something else that stood out to me, and we had the same similar situation when I was at Pisgah. When you talked about that COVID year, man, that brought up some memories and some of the same issues you dealt with. We had those same things. And Justin Sanders, who's at Germantown, he was my assistant coach at the time, a head junior high coach. He kind of echoed some of those things that you said, because we had a great year on the boys side that year. We won 20 plus games. We end up winning the district title. And we beat St. Joe against Coach Howell, and of course his great program, and he's going to be on in a couple episodes. And Coach, we were in an amazing groove. Like for us to overcome St. Joe, we were in an amazing groove. And then that ice storm, that ice storm hit, and it did make us sit out a week. And I really felt, and Justin said it first, I really felt that we could have kept on playing. I think we probably would have went a little bit further because we had to end up playing. I think I pronounced it right. Is it Mantachi? Is that correct?
Yeah, Mantachi. Yep.
Yeah, we played Mantachi. Amazing coach. I think the coach at that time is retired. And we struggled at first, but we end up beating them. And then Coahoma County and Coach Moore comes to town. Everybody counts us out, Coach. Everybody counts us out. Of course, we just had the mentality of Pisgah, and we just gonna play as hard as we can, and we're gonna see what happens. And we get like you, Coach. We get up by 18, and we end up losing that game but yours was different. You won that game. We lost that game. But I really felt like if we would have kept on playing, I'm not sure if we would have beat Coahoma or not. And if we would have beat Coahoma, we had to play New Site. And of course, New Site was a beast. But I just felt like if we could have kept playing, I feel like, man, our sky was the limit for us. So we had that same thing. And that was a crazy week. You was right, Coach. We had to play because it was so many scenarios they was throwing out there. They said, y'all can do this, y'all can do this. And then they finally made a decision. Hey, whatever y'all decide to do, these games got to be over by this certain time, because the Coliseum, we gonna start playing next Monday. So y'all better figure it out. And at that time, we was coaching girls and boys. So we were looking at it. We was like, man, we're going to play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So yeah, so it was an amazing thing. But it's funny how stories relate, though. All right, so Coach, man, you did good at Winona. You said most of those guys were junior led, or it was pretty much junior team. Yeah. Going into, you're going to have seniors coming back, but then the Senatobia job comes available. Coach, talk to us about what went into that process from taking your talents from Winona. You're not far from where you grew up. You built some things, of course, to go from 0 and 24, and you flip that thing to 22-4, and then go somewhere else. Coach, talk about that process.
So it was kind of the end. It's kind of, I guess, the end of May has just been my lucky week, I guess. A Senatobia job, was open. Knew the guy that was there. He was leaving to go to Ripley, and we'd had that relationship. Me and Coach Bird, we'd played our teams had played against each other my last 2 years at Winona, and so ended up, I took the job here. I got offered it. I think I had to interview twice. I got to interview twice for it because the principal that interviewed me, he actually left and got another job. So I interviewed with my, AD, and then my principal that I currently have now. So I was interviewed for that, and I got offered that job. And, the Senatobia job, they were 3A for 2 years. But when I got the job, it was a transition period from, I guess I've just always been in transition situations, but like they were transitioning from 3A to 4A. And the toughest, I will debate anybody. The 4A district we've been in the last 2 years, I would say, is the toughest 4A district in basketball. You have, transition from a district to Yazoo City, obviously as great as they were. Coach Carlisle, great coach, does a great job with his programs. And, Greenwood, Coach Ford, and those guys had just won a state championship. I think 2020 is the year they had knocked Raymond off. And, Clarksdale just always having athletes, and they had been, state tournament team. And obviously Gentry, they're always a state tournament team every year. And, my first year there, Coach Potts was there, and then it's a small world. I got to coach against, Coach Dorsey this year twice. But just transitioning to that district, that is a basketball tradition rich district. So, that I knew that was going to be a challenge. One of the challenges as far as moving, moving here and moving into, a new district for sure.
Coach, I feel your pain on that, especially when you are talking about a district, because we're moving into, of course, Raymond, Macomb, Wingfield, Lanier. So I definitely I feel your pain on that one, Coach, because it's like what you said earlier. Every gym that you go in, out of that group, you're gonna see some championships or some district titles. And then one thing that I'm really preparing my kids for now is sometimes when we go to some gyms, not a lot of people there. When you go to these gyms, people are going to be there, and that's an adjustment that I know they're going to have to make. And so we're going to try to get some games early in the season to get them prepared for that. We're going to try to go this summer and play some teams that have that athleticism, like all of those teams, to get them ready for that. Definitely, I was hoping to stay where we were, because a lot of those teams, they mirrored each other. We had about the same athleticism, same skill set. Obviously, Quitman was a little bit more athletic than all of us in that particular district. So I feel you on that, Coach Ben. So with Senatobia, Coach, talk to us a little bit about, because I know everybody may not know about Senatobia as we kind of move into North basketball a little bit. Talk to us about your administrators, your community, your coaching staff, some of your players. Just give us a feel for Senatobia, Mississippi, and the high school.
So Senatobia, Mississippi, it's a college town actually, in the Northwest Community College here. And, I'm familiar with the area. I've actually got family that lives here in Senatobia. So as a kid, I've made many trips up here, but administration here has been great. Principal Coach Alford, he was a former baseball coach here, and he helped with girls and boys basketball. My athletic director, Coach Sinkfield, is Senatobia alum. Long time. He's coached football, basketball, baseball here. And, my superintendent, obviously, Mr. Chris Fleming, who might as well say Coach Chris Fleming. He coached high school boys basketball for years too. It's been great working for those guys, coaches, and getting to work alongside Coach Toshiba Jones here has been great too. Obviously she won a state championship in 2020. Yep. Here with Senatobia, and won a lot of basketball games here, and does a very good job with her girls basketball program here. So just getting to be in the community has been great, really supportive. That's a great town, great area. It's kind of in the middle. You got, South Haven, Memphis above it, Oxford up here as well. So, it's just a great area, great place to live, great school district, great place to be.
Yeah, I remember when the girls, I'm glad you brought that up. I remember when the girls won that state championship, and that was the year it was in Oxford at Ole Miss, right?
They went against Louisville,
Yeah.
Brayson, who was, Gatorade, big time player, scoring, just to watch, them win that championship and, defeat their team or whatever. And, that was pretty special for them for sure.
Yeah, it was. And the coaching staff at Senatobia, man, they were dressed, man. They was dressed.
That's true. I tell Coach Jones that every day. So I'll tell you what, because I didn't know her at the time, but my first thing when I got here, I told her, I said, y'all are the best. There will not be probably a state championship game in another history with the best dressed coaching staff, because it wasn't even that game. It was like a lot of games. They were always in sync with their attire. So, they were always with that for sure.
Yeah, that was amazing to see, man. Like everybody talks about that, so that was a pretty cool part. Coach, before we talk a little bit about North basketball, I know you talked about the season so far. Just talk us a little bit. Just give us a small summary of the season, because again, I checked out, looked at the schedule, things of that nature, and of course, Coach, you did have, like say, a gauntlet Obviously, you played in the same district with Yazoo City, obviously the state champions. So just talk us a little bit about the season, just briefly, and then we'll go on to some North Mississippi basketball.
So, this season we kind of got off to a quick start. We started out 3-1 this year, and then we had some close losses. We had, and this year, as I summarize, we had 3 games this year that we lost on buzzer beaters. And when you lose on a buzzer beater, and just talking to people, they're like, "How's that even statistically like that?" Sometimes you'll have a buzzer beater year. Maybe there's some coaches that go years without a buzzer beater. We had 3 and actually 4 games this year decided on buzzer beaters. We happened to be on the right side of it one time, but we lost 1 game on a buzzer beater, and just had some close losses early in the season where we just couldn't. It's like we couldn't put 4 quarters together. And the thing about our kids is we kept fighting. Like, it's one thing is, in practice, we had some tough competitive practices. Kids were just, that was probably the frustrating part about early, especially about our season. Just like, early in the year, especially, like, kids were fighting and playing hard, but, like I said, the ball just wasn't bouncing our way. And like I said, we played some tough teams to get us ready for district. Like, obviously, North Panola, the solid 3A year in and year out. We played South Haven, really well coached team. 6A, we played Grenada, of course, on a neutral site. I can go through. We played a lot of good teams, to get us ready for district playing. Obviously, like Byhalia was a non-district game for us this year, and they obviously made it to the state tournament this year. And then after Christmas, we got into district play. And first district game, we played Clarksdale, who they're a 3rd-round team this year. It was one of them weird games. We were close 3rd quarter, I think, maybe down, maybe a 4 or 5 point game, and it was just one of those years that it was 0.9 seconds on the clock. They take it sideline out of bounds on their end of the floor, end of the 3rd quarter. Kid catches the ball, falling out of bounds, just banks in a 3. It's going into the 4th quarter, and I'm just like, at what point it's just like, and we lost that game. And our front end of our district schedule is tough. And that Friday night, I know we go to Yazoo City, which they're going to be playing, I know, tomorrow night in a national tournament. We go down there and they're just really good, hard to beat at their place. And, they jumped on us. And so our 3rd district game, we played Greenwood. Greenwood's obviously a team, like I said, a few years removed from a state championship. And one of those games, we were down 43. I think we were down 12 or 13 at halftime. And, I go in the locker room that game and, kind of get into our guys a little bit just for how we was playing, just wasn't playing up to our standard. We come out the second half and play some really good basketball, get back in the game. Had the lead in that game late, 2 times at the free throw line, chance to ice the ball game. We bricked the front end of a 1-and-1, and it's just one of them things that you kind of in the back of your mind's like we're going to pull it off. And then we had the ball. It was a tie ball game. We had the ball, and I called a timeout, drew up something, and it didn't. As a coach, sometimes you draw stuff up and it don't go as planned. The player loses the ball, and Greenwood takes it. We pick the ball, stop ball, and they try to throw the ball. They throw the ball inside. My player lunges for the steal, falls on the ground, and Greenwood just throws up a floater, and it goes in. So that was tough, and obviously, when your kids are playing hard, and we spent all that the second half just fighting and getting back in the game, and for that to happen, and to go in that locker room, and I mean, it was like a funeral in that locker room. A lot of tears, a lot of crying. I mean, like, it hurt. Like that one, it really hurt just because of just how everything our season has gone. And I think it was just kind of the game where the emotion let out, and this is kind of, I guess, something I heard of. We go to Gentry on a Tuesday. That was a Friday night. That we go there on a Tuesday night, and obviously they hadn't won a district game yet. They had played, and we were both, winless. So somebody was gonna get their first district win. I mean, just a tough fall. It's kind of one of them defensive slugfests, or as I like to call it. It was a rock fight, low scoring game. Late in the 4th quarter, again we were up. I think we were up 2. Had a chance at the free throw line. We was up 1. Had a chance at the free throw line to ice the game. because I know me and my assistants, we were kind of, we were debating when he got to the free throw line. All right, if we go up three, we're going to foul probably. Because, it's kind of the new debate in basketball, especially over the last few years, is when you're up three, do you want to foul? And kind of me is like, if I'm under 10 seconds, I'm going to foul. That's kind of where I've swayed to. But, Gentry gets it. Obviously we guarded their first thing well, and Coach Dorsey calls a timeout. And, I think we were under maybe 6 seconds to go. They inbound the ball, playing man defense, great ball pressure. He blows by the original defender, but guy steps over. He takes a charge, but I know late games, a lot of times you're not going to get that call. Shoots a floater, the ball bounces off the back iron and into the goal. So that's 2 straight games. So we lost at the buzzer. And I'm just like, it was another locker room. It's just like, it was frustrating. And before that game, it's kind of running another verse that I used before and after that game is I'm actually what I call, I guess, a floater teacher. I teach in different classrooms, don't necessarily have my own classroom. Well, in the art classroom, right next to the desk, there's a verse out of Job, and it says, although he slay me, yet I'll still trust in him. And I read that verse, going into that game, and just looking at it, and and it's kind of to back up before that game. I actually, in my pregame speech that night we played at Gentry, I told the story of Job and ended with that verse because even though basketball is not nowhere near as hard as obviously what Job went through in the Bible, but to sit there and kind of compare, Job went through a season in his life, nothing went right. Like, lost his kids, lost his farm, his, house, and, even his health. He lost everything. Like nothing went right for him. So I kind of compared that to, our struggles, how the year just things just wasn't going right. And, that it's kind of another verse that we kind of went on, like, even though things don't go our way, we're still going to trust in the process and trust in everything. And I think the next game, after that, a lot of times after a close loss like that, you kind of you look ahead on the schedule and say, all right, this game we can get back on track. And you look on the schedule and you got Yazoo City coming to your gym. That's your next game. And the crazy part, that game, we jumped on Yazoo City. We were actually, I think we jumped out like 13-6, was up at halftime of that game. And actually in the fourth quarter, we were up 2 late in that game and actually had a chance. But, late in that game, Coach Carlisle does a great job with strategic and a lot of things, just what he does. And they went to a 2-3 zone, and their length, we got a really long team, just gave us trouble. And we had a few bad, close games is possession by possession. We had a couple of possessions that, just didn't go our way. And, obviously we ended up losing that game by 9. Well, the next week we had severe weather, I think on Tuesday night, and the game got pushed to a Wednesday. Mississippi's crazy. So you think it'd be snow, but it wouldn't. It was, chance of tornadoes. And we go to Clarksdale, and, close game, back and forth. Game again, we had the lead and ended up losing the lead. And about 10 seconds to go, I think, they were at the free throw line, and Clarksdale was up 2. And they missed the free throw. And as soon as, the referees at the gym was loud, one of them Delta environments, the gyms are going to be loud. And, they got this great, tough environment to play in. We get a rebound. And my first reaction is, okay, I want to call a timeout, set something up because I still had about 9 seconds. The referee didn't hear me. So I'm just like, all right, I'm going to just let this thing play out. He's pushing it down the floor. We had a 3-on-2. We drill this every day. And they passed the ball to a kid that, this is first year playing high school basketball because I had a couple of guys foul out, and they throw the ball to him, and the shot goes up and it goes in. And we won that game on a buzzer beater. He hits that shot at the buzzer, and that was just a special moment. And, just from everything we'd been through that year to see finally us on the right end of a buzzer beater. I know my first reaction, I think I ran out on the court and just hugged the kid. And, to see the team, just everybody go out on the floor. And, that was just a special win to get that. And, the next game, we had a non-district game. And A team that we ended up winning that game. And, after those games, I kind of felt like, okay, the kids are playing hard. We finally got in a 2-game winning streak, the first 2-game winning streak that we had since, obviously early in the season. And, kind of feel like things are kind of, starting to click. They always say you want to get hot at the right time of the year. And then, of course, the last 2 years it hadn't failed, ice storms. We get ice and all that. And, and like you mentioned earlier about, your team at Presley, it killed our momentum. We were out of school for an entire week, and we were supposed to play Gentry at home that Tuesday night. And, after we'd lost on that buzzer beater at Gentry and having them coming at home, we kind of felt good about our chances. Well, it was weird, that game ends up getting pushed to the side because we weren't in school. I think we were in school that Monday. But, obviously we prepped for Gentry that Monday to play Tuesday. And obviously we were out of school from Tuesday. And as the closer we got till Friday, we had no practice time. So we have to go from just as a staff, coaching staff, prepping from Gentry to now Greenwood, which was on the road. And our district was crazy. It was so many scenarios to where we could still get third place. And, we were obviously wanting to get third because you guarantee that playoff spot. And we ended up we didn't get any practice time because we were out of school that week. And I think that Friday we played at Greenwood. It was their senior night. And our district was weird this year, like from 2 to 5 could fall in any way. So everybody was still playing for something. And we go there on their senior night. We hadn't practiced all week. I think that Friday at walkthrough, shoot around, we was able to get some shots of it, just game plan, which is really all we got in. We went there and, it was a close game. We're rusty to start the game, came out flat, which any team that ain't really touched the ball. But our guys fought back. We got in the game and, late in the third, fourth, they just hit some shots and it kind of got away from us. And the district tournament was Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. So obviously, we brought them in that Sunday and practiced and, lost to Gentry in the district tournament. So, it was just kind of weird how it ended the season. You go from the buzzer beater, a win after, you kind of feel like things are fisting the click going the right direction, and the ice storm comes in and just kind of kills your momentum. And so that's kind of how our season went. A lot of close losses this year. I think, like I said, out of our 16 losses this year, kind of like my third year at Winona, most of them were single digit losses to where we had to lead late in the game, just couldn't close it out.
And coach, that's kind of what coaching is all about, because there's so many things that can happen. And you talked about those things within a season. And that's kind of what I guess people outside of the game of basketball don't understand. Things from like, just think about it, buzzer beaters, like those buzzer beaters that happen to you, man, you probably wouldn't even see that in a movie 9 times out of 10. But for that to happen to you in real life, and those are real life tears. It is so funny, and we see it during March Madness, how a game like basketball can really make you upset, make you cry. Obviously, you see people fight, make you laugh all at one time. And so those things are real life scenarios that happen. But even through it all, man, you kept grinding, you kept going, because that was a very, very weird scenario. And I didn't even realize that y'all was out that long. So to be able to go through that, again, it just speaks volumes to who you are to keep persevering through that. But, praying for better days. And I know that, all things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
Being in that district is a tough thing. And I remember you talked about the 4 and 5 game. I took it down on my notes on when you were talking about the 4 and 5 game when you were at Winona. Yeah, that 4 and 5 game is something else, coach. Like, we see the play in now in the NBA. We see the first 4 in, and of course, in the NCAA tournament. But that 4 and 5 game in high school in Mississippi, that 4 and 5 game is intense. Like, you don't even really get a chance to just, like be on like chill that day in school. You constantly think about it. It's like the time going slow. It's really a do or die game. So, we always talk about, it's do or die last game. But when you're in that moment, man, especially when they get down to that fourth quarter, like I probably played in about 3 or 4 as a coach. We had one this year at Richland. We played Northeast Jones. Obviously, they beat us both times. Going into the last game, obviously we're going to have 4 freshmen, 4 sophomores, and 1 junior. And we got it down, coach. Obviously, they had beat us the last game by 30 plus. we got that game down. We had a pretty good game plan that, thank God, kind of gave us. He did give us that, game plan, and we had an opportunity to win that game. I think we were down by maybe 5, maybe with 50 seconds left in the game. And that 4-5 game is intense. And that, to me, that can be a difference maker, especially if you have a balanced district, like you said. You like obviously Yazoo City was, leading your district, but if you like you said, 2-5 is the same. Sometimes that I guess that elimination game, as they say, the consolation game. Well, not consolation game. I'm sorry, the elimination game. Sometimes that can propel you long into the district tournament. It just depends on what type of team that you have. Coach, before we talk a little bit about basketball, I did want to ask you this, and then we'll get into a couple basketball questions and get into our last segment. And you have experience with them all, so I'm glad. It's always a discussion: where is the best basketball played? Is it North Mississippi? Is it in the Delta area? Is it in like the central located area in Mississippi? Obviously, where I live, Jackson, Rankin County, Hinds County, Madison, etc. And then you got the coast, and then you kind of got like, I break the South down into two parts. You got the coast area, and then you got like the South area, around like your Hattiesburg,
Pine
Laurel.
Belt region, I think, kind of like they call it.
Yeah, that's it, the Pine Belt region. That's it, Coach. There you go. You're helping me out. So those are all regions, and obviously everybody's going to be biased, obviously, towards their region or where they play. But you had an opportunity to be able to obviously grow up in the North, coach in the North, obviously coach against teams in the Delta area. Obviously, you kind of can trickle down here a little bit to play in this central area. But Coach, I'll do this just for time's sake. Tell me just, I guess, the strengths. That'd be a good word. Talk about the strengths of the North, obviously the Delta, central area, the Pine Belt, and then the coast, because it's a great conversation to have. And that's a great barbershop talk to have. And it can be very, very positive instead of having some of the negative conversation that you hear, when people have about basketball. But let's talk about things that are value. So, Coach, just give us some strengths about those particular teams based in those areas from what you have seen. And it can be girls and boys, or it can just be boys. I just want to talk about just regional basketball.
So like North Mississippi, like Northeast Mississippi, a lot of things with that is they start kids at probably third, fourth grade playing in those little leagues and that type of things. And they really fundamentals from a really early age in those groups. And, really, it's one thing about when you have to go play a lot of those teams, they're not necessarily sometimes maybe as athletic as teams like, obviously like the Delta, Jackson area, but like a lot of times in the area Northeast Mississippi, you have a lot of fundamentally sound teams. And like I said, just a lot of just program wise, like you can go to every region in Mississippi and just find, there's those schools. I mean, there's blue blood schools of basketball as well. I mean, like obviously Boonville in North Mississippi with the Dynasty, they have going on up there, and Inglemar's, and I'd get in trouble if I tried to start listing, all of them, because there's so many, just really good, teams. And that's one thing I would say about North Mississippi basketball, especially when you kind of get over in that Northeast Mississippi region. As far as and a lot of it's just style of play, how teams play. Like they kind of play more of a methodical, slower pace. And not all, like a lot of them teams, they run as well. But for a lot of them teams, you kind of run into teams that you'll try to slow you down, and they'll screen you to death, run a lot of motion type of stuff. So that's one of the things that I think kind of sticks out with North, kind of Northeast Mississippi and that type of region with basketball. And then you go into obviously the Delta is Delta, the athleticism over there is just it's unreal with the athletes in the Delta that you run into. And they like a lot of Delta teams, they're going to get a lot of pressure, and teams they're going to like to get up and down the floor. And that's just preparing for a lot of those games. One of my messages to my guys that even my white on team here's like, guys, we don't want to get in a track meet with them tonight, because obviously the way a lot of those teams run and play, like it's just style of ball that if you try to get in a track meet with some of them teams, they'll run you out of the gym pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then
I'm sorry, go ahead, Coach.
No, I mean, like I said, Central Mississippi, kind of like, they got that good, a lot of good mixture of that type of basketball. Obviously, Jackson area basketball, JPS, for years, it's kind of like that gold standard in basketball. Like for instance, like the Murrahs, the Callaways, Lanier, Provine, Wingfield. Like you can just name a lot of those schools. You can go on Provine, like all those type of schools that really good. And South Mississippi, you obviously see what Raymond's done, and Hattiesburg. There's a lot of teams, even in South Mississippi, that's really good year in and year out. I think Mississippi as a whole has really good basketball. Mississippi's known for football, a lot of good football athletes and programs, but I think Mississippi slept on a lot of times with basketball. There's really good basketball played in Mississippi throughout the state. And like you went back to region, like it's like each region kind of has its own unique style of basketball that they play.
Yeah, that's a major thing. Because I didn't know much about North basketball. Obviously, I grew up Central area, Jackson area. So I always thought, our area was supreme. And, I never really gave respect to anybody, any other region. And again, that's me being a young guy or a young kid, young teenager, and just taking pride, in what I'm doing. But as I began to coach, I want to say, I think our fourth year, maybe our third or fourth year at Pisgah, we were in the North. And that's when I first got introduced to the excellence of Northeast basketball and just North basketball in general. And I would agree with what you said, the fundamental part, the youth basketball that they have. And here's something that's kind of unique, and I didn't even realize this. Like some of those, and I know you know because you're a North guy, some of those teams don't play football up north. And so basketball is their major sport. Like they have, like, it's really an amazing sight to see. And so that makes a difference. I know when we went to new site, and no lie, coach, and I know you probably know this. I tell anybody, if your team is going to new site, your fans better be there early, because if you're not there, it will not be a seat for your fans. And we played them in the playoffs, and it happened that we all rode, we had a charter bus, we rode together, so our fans would get in, or was able to get in. But man, they feel both sides. They're gonna get there early, and if you late, like it's a packed gym. I'm talking about, man. It almost reminded me like of like a game that you see like on the college level. Like they cheer, it's loud, it's exciting. It's a different sight to see. So North basketball is an amazing sight. Obviously, I agree with you with the Delta athletic. One thing I would add is the environment. Sometimes that environment that makes a difference, because a lot of areas in the Delta, usually they have gyms that are right there on the floor. Their fans are live, and they understand if you haven't been there before, or your school doesn't have that type of environment, they use it as an intimidating factor to be able to do that. Obviously in Jackson, of course, I would just say what I learned about Jackson is like there's a lot of basketball that's played in a small area, and the kids in this area, they're able to just go against, and not saying in not any other areas because it is, but these kids are able to play kids at a high level because of the big population of people in this area. Rankin County, Hinds County, Madison County, there's so many schools right there that's so competitive. Like you could end up going into the rec gym, and you can, let's say if you go to Richland, you can go to a rec gym in this metro area, and you can play a kid from Callaway, or you can play a kid from Madison Central. If Raymond's not as far, you can play a kid from there. Like it's so many different kids in that particular environment. I know there's like everywhere in the Delta and of course in the Northeast, but I can just remember those great pickup games. And I heard David Sanders talk about it, and a lot of those guys, and Mo Williams talk about it. Like they would go to the YMCA, and those games would be, those would be live games, because you can imagine all of those guys in one area being in one spot. Of course, the Pine Belt is always good. I know Hattiesburg won a state championship down there. And then the coast basketball, there are some legit programs in that area. So again, I like this, what you said. There are a lot of blue bloods in what we're doing. Coach, let's talk a little bit about basketball. I like something that you talked about, the timeouts. Most coaches that I brought on here, Coach, and probably me and you may be the same in this, and obviously our guy Jay Wright as well. I believe in that timeout, taking that foul. Majority of my coaches who have been on here, and again, it's no knock to them. They say they're gonna play good defense and play it out. But I'm like you, coach. If I'm thinking about putting you on that free throw line, and that may be unpopular, maybe it's just me and you. But I really like this. So it's interesting to be able to hear you say that. Coach, I'm gonna talk about a couple of things. Defensive philosophy. We talked about it earlier in the show. But Coach, what is your defensive philosophy? What are some things that are a staple in Coach Coleman's program that if we go watch you all play, we know we're gonna see this on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, primarily man-to-man coach is what we run, a lot of man-to-man. This year, we kind of transitioned into a no-middle man-to-man defense. Kind of, that the original that came from, Bob Knight back in his day at Indiana was kind of the founder of the no-middle, no-paint, man-to-man defense. That's one thing we pride ourselves on is we want to try to keep the ball on one side of the floor, and we want to help outside the paint, help early, and, rotate, talk, communicate, and a lot of things defensively we do is, with our ball screen defense, if it's on one side of the floor, we want to ice it and try to keep it on one side of the floor. We want you to beat us. Just from watching film from years past, a lot of teams that get in the paint either score or it leads to an assist out, because if you let a player get in the middle of the paint, then he's got two sides of the floor. He can kick it to this side, he can kick it to that side, but if you keep it on one side of the floor and he tries to make that skip pass across the floor, your help defenders better be quick enough to at least go get that steal, or they're in a position to go close out. So that's one thing we pride ourselves on, is not allowing the ball to go in the middle of the paint. Obviously during games, I have a volunteer assistant that actually played on the JV team at Oxford when I was there. He's volunteered and helped me this year. I have him with a clipboard. He keeps up with our paint drives every game, and we try to have a game goal to where we keep it under 10 paint drives a game. That's one thing. Like, we want you, if you're going to beat us, you need to be able to take a contested three or a contested mid-range shot. Like, we don't want any layups in the paint, because we firmly believe on the defensive end, if you're going to beat us, you're just going to have to make a lot of threes and contested, mid-range shots to beat us. Like, we're not going to allow you into the paint and to make layups and shoot paint touches. And obviously another staple of the defensive system we run is, I got it from Coach Kermit Davis, who obviously did a good job at Middle Tennessee and was at Ole Miss. And I got it from a coaching clinic that I went to my first year at Winona, and just watching his 1-3-1 defense that morphs into that 2-3. And I've been running that ever since. And, if you got a guy at the top that's active, you can really get a lot out of it. So we do that a lot. And I've honestly won a lot of basketball games with that defense. We'll start out the game man, and our second half, we may throw that at them, and teams just aren't ready for it. And we've gotten ourselves back into games and even just opened games up in the fourth quarter with it before. And obviously back to what we were talking about earlier, as far as, learning from other coaches, like Coach Pate's 2-2-1. That's my favorite press defense to go to. We do a lot of 2-2-1 here that I got from him. So that's kind of the main three things as far as my defense philosophy. A lot of things that we like to do.
Man, I hate that for Coach Kermit Davis, man, that what happened at Ole Miss. It's kind of like what we said. It's not always easy. There's a lot of different things that happen. And if you go back and really look at his tenure there are a lot of things that he had to deal with that really, I think, affected what he was trying to do. Like, had to go through COVID, obviously Ruffin missed some time. It was just a lot of different things. A great coach did his thing in Middle Tennessee. But that's the business that we live in, and of course, is a part of it. And we do know that. I'm like you, Coach. When you said his name, Coach Davis, I knew that you were talking about that 1-3-1 that morphs into a 2-3, and it's a beautiful sight to see. And then with the 2-2-1, obviously, we had Coach Tadlock on as well, and of course, Coach Norman. When he's at Meridian, obviously they like that 2-2-1 as well. Coach, to be honest, I'm thinking about it because I know Raymond is in our district. And I know Coach got them two big guys, and I know he's gonna use it. So I'm trying to mentally prepare for that, because Coach got the guy EJ, or the kid EJ, the teenager EJ, the young man. He's about 6'7", 6'8". He got another big. So, and I know he wants to throw that diagonal pass. So, Coach, and to be honest, I may have to call you to give me some tips because I know Coach Tadlock gonna bring that 2-2-1, especially on
Absolutely.
offensive philosophy, Coach. Talk to us a little bit about your offense philosophy and yeah, talk about your offense philosophy, and in that, talk to me about how do you manage your subs and your rotations, because you said it earlier. We said on the previous episode, this generation wants it right now. Like, I know your kids know their verse because again, that verse ties in perfectly when you are Colossians 6:9. It ties in perfectly to that moment. Like, you have to really work for it. But a lot of kids, is either now or I'm not going to play anymore. So talk to us about your offense philosophy along with how you deal with your rotation of subbing players in and out.
Offensively, we have just a basic motion we run with a lot of screening away, back screens. And then this year I actually put it in the week we played Yazoo City. A 5-out offense, kind of some principles from Bob Huggins, this 5-out offense that he used to run called the open post. I knew we really we didn't have just like the true big. We had some bigs, but we have kind of our bigs kind of play like guards. And obviously Coach Carlisle, his starting lineup was so much length. So just for watching film, I said, I need something to just spread them out. Because, my guard play was good enough to get by them. So we have a 5-out offense with some wrinkles that, we threw in with that. And we had a lot of success for the most part of that Yazoo City game with it. And so we were able to score with that. And so that's something that I've kind of built off of since then, is that 5-out that we run, just kind of spacing the floor and, letting guys create. And then just set plays. We run a lot of set plays. Obviously, I got some from Coach Tyler at Oxford and just Coach Pate at ICC. And just now you know, with the internet, with so much out there, like I follow, probably if you go to my Twitter likes and TikTok likes, everything, it's probably so many just plays I see because there's so much out there. And I'm a firm believer in, you want your best player to have the ball in his hands. So we have different actions that we run for the post, that we run for a guard, to get them the ball in spots they're comfortable. Like, my best guard or whatever, I'll run something for them. Like, where you feel comfortable getting the ball. You want it from the left wing, right wing, this elbow. Same with my bigs, like which block you want the ball from, which elbow. So just basically the offensive things we do as far as quick hitters, and a lot of just just an adjustment to our personnel that we have. One just kind of random offense I ran this year that I actually got it from Coach Lockhart. He did a little bit when I was in high school. It's kind of a post triangle offense with 3 bigs, because early in the year my point guard was out and I had it was weird. I had mostly bigs in the gym. And our first game or two, we kind of ran this what I call post triangle offense, where put a big at the free throw line, big on the block, and big on the opposite block, kind of a cross screen, down screen type of action, just continuous movement. And that's just the type of offense I run, just always big. Because, in high school, we have to adjust and adapt to what players we're given. It's not like, the college game where we can go recruit people for this system. So my offense philosophy just kind of adapt to what personnel we have. But we have a basic motion that we run, and, just set plays, quick hitters, just to get, our best players the ball and get them in spots where they're comfortable from scoring from.
Oh,
And
sorry, go ahead.
no, like as far as playing time, the quote I give, I mean, it's same as in the real one. Like this, we're not an equal opportunity employer here. Your best shooters are going to get the most shots. That's just how it goes. Early in the year, with our non-district games, pretty much everybody will kind of play the first few games early in the year. You're just trying to see what kids can do, what guys can do, and I tell kids throughout the first part of the season, like, when we get to district time, as far as just all these chances they're not going to be there, because district games, they're very important. Usually my rotation, it's varied. My last year at Wynonna, I had about 6.5-man rotation. And, and then, the last 2 years here, anywhere from 8 to 9. Eight's kind of my magic number to where I like to get to. That's kind of how I manage the rotation. And as far as just with this generation, you mentioned it earlier, they want it right now. It's not process driven, with a lot of kids. So, I like to communicate, even with the ones that's not playing, like communicate like wine, just try to keep them motivated the best I can because, it's tough, especially in the society we live in. You got to try to keep them bought into what you're doing because it's easy for when that kid goes to the lunch table at school the next day and their friends are telling, man, I don't know why coach don't play you. He don't know what he's doing. You should be playing. Or if they're getting it, some of them, they get it at home or just out in the community, people are telling that. So that's kind of other obstacles as a coach you have to go through with kids. So I try to always, just get a feel for the players, the ones that's even, maybe not playing as much, just try to talk to them daily just to try to keep them motivated because, you don't obviously want to lose them, especially if you got an upperclassman heavy team and they're freshman and sophomore, like they play a, integral part in your program. That's why I'm with scheduling. I like to play as many JV games as possible. Just that way it just keeps those kids motivated and playing, a lot of games. And, it's kind of was the challenge during the COVID year. A lot of schools really wouldn't play in JV games. So it was just kind of hard even that year, keeping some of the younger ones kind of motivated. But it's kind of how I manage that with, your freshmen and sophomores. Even if I got a junior that I maybe keep that's not, hadn't maybe played basketball, I'll let them play some JV minutes as well, just to kind of, you want them just to get to play some basketball, just that keeps them motivated and keeps them, practicing hard.
Coach, I think that's good. And that's good for coaches to be able to hear because that is a challenge. And I try to come up with different things that we deal with as coaches because sometimes it's good to be able to see how other individuals deal with it. And again, I'm just taking small notes about, just your philosophy on offense, defense, things of that nature, and even making substitutions because people outside of basketball may not realize, but that's a major thing. And these kids have to go to the cafeteria table. They have to see it on social media. They have to hear it at home. And those are the conversations that you must have with your kids about playing time. And you hear this all the time, like, Coach, well, that's not fair. Or this, and this. And when we played, our coach told us this is how it's going to be, and we roll with it. And so this generation, you got to do a lot more explaining. You got to be patient. So it's adjusting with time. Coach, let's get into some fast break questions and to get you out of here, man. Again, I love this portion because again, it's able to get into the basketball side of us. Think outside the box a little bit. So, Coach, my first fast break question. So, again, for those who may be new to the episode, our fast break questions are just some questions that we randomly throw at our coaches. They pretty much give a quick response, and then we move on to the next one. So, my first one for Coach Coleman is you get to start an NBA team in Seattle. Obviously, this has kind of been a major thing in the NBA. Individuals in Seattle, they've been coming up with T-shirts and slogans and social media pages to get a team back in Seattle. So I thought it would be a cool question. So, Coach, you get a team in Seattle. What was the mascot name? They called you and said, Coach Coleman, give us a mascot for our NBA team that we started in Seattle. Obviously, we know they were the Seattle Supersonics. So, Coach, what would be a nickname that you would give to the team in Seattle?
Maybe a little outside the box would be the Seattle Rain because it does rain there a lot. Something to kind of go with the city and how it goes. They say like it rains so many days a year there, so I feel it'd be cool to maybe have a raindrop logo and that on the court. I feel like you could really get some cool designs with that.
I like that, Coach. I can see almost like a baby blue, sky blue design on that
Yep.
jersey. Coach, what's the most memorable game you ever watched on the basketball side?
There's so many good games I watched, but just kind of thinking about that, the 2009 Big East tournament, Syracuse and UConn, the 6 overtime game. You had Johnny Flynn. That was back when he was a top prospect, and AJ Price for UConn, Kemba Walker. You had that backcourt, and just how that game it just seemed like it was never going to end. Both teams, there's just no quit in them, and just to watch those guys duel and go at it, that would probably be one of my more memorable games of watching with basketball. And which obviously I could go on and on at the high school level games I've seen, NBA, but that one kind of really sticks out just because of the longevity of it, 6 overtimes.
Coach, I forgot about that game, man. I'm glad you looked at it. I might have to go on YouTube after we finish doing this and check that game. I forgot about that, Coach. Coach, here go one. Of course, this is a basic conversation we ask all of our guests. Coach, what is your NBA all-time starting five?
All right, so my all-time, and we'll go with the one. I'm gonna put Magic Johnson
Okay.
because obviously, he could run the show. It was kind of like did LeBron things before. We had LeBron. The younger generation don't know that. Magic kind of was the first kind of do some of the similar things that LeBron does. Shooting guard, obviously, gonna have to go with Michael Jordan, one of the best to ever do it. And then at the small forward, I'm gonna go with a lot of people. Forget Larry Bird. Larry Legend. Maybe a little biased just because I'm a big Celtics fan, but Larry Bird was that guy that was very fundamental. He could score, and I'll never forget just stories about him about his trash talk. And one game he put up like 30 something on the Trailblazers with his left hand or something. And at the four, and it just pains me because the Celtics have always had big time battles with LeBron James, but I got to go with LeBron at the four because he can play 3 and 4, and just this year, with him passing the scoring record, like you got to give your props to him. And the center position, I just remember he was one of the first players I grew up watching in the NBA, and that was Shaq. I'd have to go with Shaq as my center. I mean, people don't understand Shaq was a dominant force whenever I was, in the 2000s and, late 90s in his era. That was back in the era where, the post play was very different. That was kind of old school, back to the basket, and just how he would dominated the game back then. And so he would have to be my five. And I just feel like that's a pretty solid five right there.
Yeah, Coach, that is a solid five. I see another common trend, of course, with Coach Tadlock, obviously at Raymond, Coach Trey Collins at Meridian, and of course you, Coach Coleman, got LeBron James at the four, and that's a common trend that I'm starting to see with all of our groups. And I agree, Shaq was amazing. And it would have been amazing to be able to see the Shaq in Orlando throughout his whole career. Because if you go back and look at it, LSU, Orlando, when he first got to LA, of course, he picked up some weight, which even made him even super, like Superman for real. But his athleticism, when you watch him early Orlando days, was an amazing thing. But I agree, Coach Shaq was a dominant force. All right, Coach, this is a different question. I haven't asked this one yet on the podcast. This one is top 5 jerseys of all time. So, Coach, I want you to think about this. Could be NBA jerseys, maybe college jerseys on the basketball side. Coach, what are the 5? What will probably be your top 5 jerseys that you've seen or you like of all time?
I would say one of them, the Timberwolves jerseys with Kevin Garnett, Latrell Sprewell, that era. That was a kind of cool thing. The Pistons, with the horse and flame on it back during Grant Hill's day. That was always a cool jersey. Sixers under AI, those jerseys were pretty neat. Raptors, I would say, with really kind of now I like the North jerseys they have, but also back during Vince Carter's day with the dinosaur on them. And I would say I like those Jazz uniforms from Karl Malone, John Stockton days. So those are kind of my. I mean, I feel like early, maybe late '90s, early 2000s was kind of, I would say, just peak uniform days for the NBA. With just the, I mean, it was a hard one to pick from. There's so many cool uniforms back then. Obviously, like the Rockets, they had some cool uniforms at one time. But like I said, there's a lot of uniforms you could pick from that group.
Yeah, I really liked the pinstripe black jersey that the Chicago Bulls had. I think maybe 97 or 98. Those were different. And then Orlando Magic had something kind of similar to that pinstripe, but I really did like that black and red pinstripe for Chicago. All right, coach, let's look at shooters. Of course, everybody knows Steph is the man. So I'm going with the next 2 guys that are in line. Coach, you going with Ray Allen or you going with Reggie Miller?
That's tough, but I'm gonna go with Ray Allen. Ray Allen hit, some big shots throughout his career in the playoffs. Obviously, the one that sticks out is his against, San Antonio in Game 6, and just kind of how Ray Allen's game evolved. Early in his career, he was more of an aggressive slasher to the goal, and was very, people forget Ray Allen was an explosive player. He was an explosive guard, could dunk it, and just how later in his career he just evolved into that spot up shooter. And obviously he broke Reggie Miller's record, which I mean that's really one you could throw a coin up in either one because they were both very good players. And Ray Allen's kind of one that kind of love-hate relationship because when he was with the Celtics, really liked the things he did there, and then just how he left or whatever. I just kind of but he did some good things in Miami and throughout his career, and just he hit a lot of big shots in the playoffs. Reggie did as well. You can't forget about I think it was like 8 points in 20-something seconds that he scored against the New York Knicks, whatever. But maybe I'm just a little biased because Ray Allen was kind of more in my generation that I watched a whole lot more of.
Yeah, man, that's again, you can go either way. You can't go wrong with that. And Ray Allen, man, I agree. Like Ray Allen, like I don't know if kids realize it. Like when he played at UConn, like that game was a pretty memorable game when UConn played Georgetown with Allen Iverson versus
Yep.
you say Ray Allen. That was a pretty good game. Coach, now I guess we're talking about a couple guards. Man, I'm not sure if they're gonna fall in this top 5 for you, but Coach, what would be a top 5 shooting guards of all time?
I would say obviously Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade. People feel like if Wade injuries don't derail his career like they did late, I mean it'd be amazing to see what he could still be doing. Dwayne Wade, obviously Allen Iverson, he was a special player back in his prime. Like I mean, basically carried that Sixers team to the NBA Finals and had some big moments. And then, I'd have to say, you can't forget about the logo, Jerry West. People forget, he lost all those finals, but, put up a lot of big numbers in the playoffs. There's a lot of good shooting guards that time. People, that also was thinking about like Clyde Drexler, Clyde the Glide. He's one that a lot of people forget about. That was also a really good shooting guard, like George Gervin. So many, lists can just go on and on with that. Obviously Reggie Miller is one of the, can be in that conversation as well.
Yeah, coach, that's a tough list. And I was thinking about when you said Jerry West. Man, I don't know if Jerry West could have made it with this social media area, man, era.
Oh, I
Because
know.
yeah, like, man, losing that many times. But if you look at the team he was losing to and some of the games that he had and some of his performances, um, you couldn't really blame him for that or just down him for that because he gave all he had, and even his teammates sometimes, and you said it too, coach, sometimes the ball just don't fall your way. One more fast break question, coach. Who would be your all-time coaching staff? You get an opportunity to assemble a team or a group of guys, a group of young ladies to coach alongside you in probably one of the biggest events, basketball events. You could choose that one. So talk about who would be, of course, it's you. So give me 5 more guys that would be on the staff with you. So you got Coach Coleman. Obviously, you can't use your assistant coaches, obviously, because I know you would pick your assistant coaches that's working with you now. But what would be your all-time coaching staff? You get 5 guys.
If I had to go back in time and just all-time greats, you'd have to Greg Popovich for sure. John Wooden, obviously what he did at UCLA, and like I have the book, his pyramid of success. Bob Knight would be another. Red Auerbach, and I'd have to go with Phil Jackson. That's kind of my all-time coaching staff of 5. And I mean, that's one that there's so many great coaches out there. Like obviously, Coach K, Dean Smith, Roy Williams. Like you could just go on and on and on for so many coaches. But for what all those coaches did, that would kind of be my all-time coaching staff.
All right, coach, this is the final shot. For those fans who may be new to it, our final shot is the conclusion of the interview, and we allow our great coaches to be able to just close the show. So coach, take your final shot.
And first of all, I've enjoyed, the afternoon, talking basketball with you, and again, like love the podcast you're doing. And just my message would be just, back to, the verse I read, earlier, Galatians 6:9 about, don't give up and don't get tired of doing what's right. And even today's time, it's so easy to get down and down on yourself and, get frustrated, especially, as a young coach and, still trying to find your way. But, that's one thing I live by is just, you always take the high road and don't give up and always, do the right thing. And, one advice that the final thing I'll give as far as just with young coaches, aspiring coaches, surround yourself with veterans. It's one thing I've done. Obviously, all the coaches I played for in high school and middle school, I still have contact with them, and have a kind of group of guys after games. I talk to Coach Darren Coffey at Calhoun City. He's a veteran coach, has a successful program there. He's one that I talk to, and Coach Tyler, obviously, and me and Coach Dale, we talk on a daily basis. But and I can go through a list of just coaches um, that I have, in my circle. That's just one thing. Just keep those veteran coaches, two or three that you just talk to, all the time. Just kind of bounce ideas throughout the year, and that really helped me grow as a coach. Just telling them a lot of things I had going, and just hearing their stories and experiences as well. So, like I said, Mississippi's blessed with a lot of great basketball coaches, a lot of great basketball here. And I'm just excited to get to coach in Mississippi and coach against a lot of great coaches and, be a part of this.
Coach, I'm excited about it. Again, I have a great time doing this. I often talk, and one of my advisors, of course, is my brother Justin. We talk basketball all the time, and I tell him, these conversations that we have are amazing to have, and I'm excited every time we do it. And fans, a lot of our coaches, they sacrifice a lot of time for me. So I'm definitely appreciative because, again, as we said earlier in the show, they got a lot of things they have to do. For them to be able to give me a little bit of time and share their heart and let us see them is very, very amazing. Of course, some of the guys, I know Coach Dale, Coach Coffey at Calhoun City. You talking about a guy who would encourage you. I mean, he's always full of energy. Man, when you call him on the phone, man, he's full of life. He makes you feel like, hey,
Sure.
man, play.
And then another one, close out Coach Reed. He's the assistant coach at Oxford. He's been, Coach Tyler's assistant ever since I was there. And, just he's another one we talked to. I think this year we had our Saturday talks. It's kind of during the season. We talk every Saturday morning. So, just having, veteran coaches and, people just you can bounce ideas off of and talk to. That's just kind of the one thing I'll leave here today, especially with younger coaches aspiring, always continue to learn and grow. But, the wisdom from a lot of these veteran coaches, you never can go wrong with that.
I agree, Coach. If you don't take anything else from what Coach just take anything from he said, again, it's important to have you a group of people to do life with in basketball, but just in general. So as always, please subscribe. Please share on all of your platforms. Of course, we got a great following on Facebook. And so I ask everyone to continue to share on Facebook, Instagram. We post on Snapchat. So again, continue to support the program. Obviously, we are raising money for St. Jude. Every 30 days, we choose a different organization to be able to support. And so we ask our coaches, we ask our fans to be able to support it. Because again, we want to use our platform to be able to share our stories, but also raise money to help other people because I think it's important. So until next time, as I always say, be kind, be safe, and we'll see you on the next episode.